what do you think of the standard procedure that happens when a new member joins the gym and the trainer takes him for an assessment and therefore after they prescribe a program?
Ah, well, it's an interesting thing. The first thing I'll tell you is that it's not always practical. I can understand the reasoning behind it, but there's problems with the reasoning. So the first thing I'll say is, and by the way, I've seen different kinds of assessment, or different kinds of testing is what I should say. So in some of the testing that I've seen, one of the first things they do is they want to see how flexible you are. So they put you on the ground and then they have you reach forward as far as you can, and there's a little measuring device and they see how far you're able to reach. Okay? Then they might see how many push-ups you can do, how many sit-ups you can do, how many pull-ups you can do, etc. Now, for starters, let us just say that the information that yields is not very useful. Okay? Because common sense would dictate that when you're starting someone with a fitness program who has not been doing anything, right? You start at square one, right? You literally discover as you exercise what that person is capable of handling comfortably. And by comfortably, I mean physically and psychologically. So the idea that you would try to evaluate them by giving them maximum anything from the beginning has two major problems with it. First of all, if this person isn't used to doing anything, asking them to do maximum push-ups, maximum anything, is almost inviting an injury. Asking someone to maximally stretch when they've never stretched before is dangerous in and of itself. Number one. Number two is that you are introducing them to exercise immediately with a negative connotation. Because exercise, by definition, should only be, especially in the beginning, slightly more challenging than what you're used to. Not extremely more challenging than what you... In other words, you shouldn't go from doing nothing to doing maximum. So the idea that you're presenting this person with maximum effort, literally taking them until they fail, is already setting up a negative association with exercise. Right? Now, even if the trainer says, well, we're taking you to failure this time, but that's not what you're going to do every time. Right? You shouldn't even come close to failure every time. Not even close to it. Right? When you're working out, if you're working out at 70, 80% of your maximum effort, that is plenty. And it's obviously a lot less physically and psychologically challenging or discouraging as maximum effort would be. So what I would recommend is, look, when someone is brand new to the gym, or if they're not brand new to the gym, where they start, what their strength level is, what their flexibility level is, isn't as important as just simply, what are your injuries? What hurts? How are your shoulders? How's your back? How's your neck? How are your knees? How are your hips? Because those things will determine which exercises might not be comfortable, might need modification, right? I mean, even a healthy exercise, even an ideal exercise with an injured joint won't be comfortable, right? So if someone's got really, really bad knees, the fact is they won't be able to work their quads very well. That's it. The idea that they might think that they can work their quads perfectly well with knees that don't support it, that's just not realistic. Okay, so asking about injuries is almost the only thing they need to ask about. Now, it would be nice if you could also ask them, so what's your psychological tolerance? Right? They're not going to know how to answer that. So you actually can't ask. But as a good trainer, this is something that you will discover. When you have someone who has a low psychological tolerance to exercise, it is a mistake to train them super hard. Actually, it's a mistake to train almost anybody super hard in the beginning, right? But every trainer that's good should realize that what they do should be scientifically safe from an anatomical standpoint and from a physics standpoint, but it also has to be psychological comfortable. Now, that doesn't mean that it should be too easy, but it shouldn't be too hard. You have to judge that, right? So there are other assessments that are even more demanding, like, how much can you barbell squat? How much can you deadlift? Well, anyone who knows anything about the program that I recommend would know that doing deadlifts and squats with weight, especially with maximum weight, is already dangerous. It's already not useful, not practical, as compared to other better alternatives. Does that mean that they have no benefit? No, it doesn't mean that. We have seen people get benefit from squats and deadlifts. But it's all thoroughly explained in my book and in our course that the muscles that contribute to those movements can be worked better with less risk and less wasted effort using other better exercises. So rather than thinking of something as being all good or all bad, I am not saying that. I am just saying that seeing how much a person can squat as a way of determining where you should start training them is not the smartest move. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I will say too is that there are certain things that the fitness industry does that are not necessarily designed for the benefit, for the true benefit of the member. They're sort of meant for the economic benefit of those providing the service. So for example, if I was the industry and I was trying to maximize your income as a trainer, therefore magnifying my income as your dedication to me, your teacher, I would recommend to you doing things with your client that would show them their progress. So if a person's able to do 13 push-ups today, and then after 3 months they can do 23 push-ups later, you could say, look, you've improved 10 repetitions in your push-ups. That makes the client more excited, which isn't a bad thing, but it makes you, the trainer, the provider of that benefit, right, more likely to keep them as a client, right? So it doesn't mean that maxing them out at 13 repetitions on a push-up was a smart thing to begin with, right? There are other ways of measuring their progress. And not all progress has to be quantified, right? So there's a debate that could be made about how important is it to quantify benefit, right? Do you really need to tell them after 3 months or 6 months exactly how much body fat they lost, exactly how much, endurance they increased on their squat? They can look in the mirror. They can see how their clothes fit. They can see how they feel. If you're a good trainer, you should rely on visible, feelable progress rather than statistics.
Okay. So you mentioned the first thing that they should look for is injury. What about if a client is not injured?
Well, same thing. I mean, if a client is not injured, then that means you have free reign in terms of giving him all the Brig 20 or all the exercises that we know are good, ideal exercises. That's all. If you identify an injury, it just means that you might have to modify the otherwise ideal exercise, right? If, for example, some people have a spine injury, right? Then you're going to have to probably modify some of the exercises that are perfectly good for someone who's healthy, but require spinal movement. Mm-hmm. Same thing with shoulder movement. Same thing with knee movement, right? Some people are unable to move their joints in a normal, healthy way, and therefore they will be inhibited, limited in what they're able to do, even though that is a perfectly good, safe exercise.
All right. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.